Well, there's a new release by Oxfam, which says that wealth inequality is becoming worse. That's no surprise. But they do say that urgent action needs to be taken. That's their view. Pooven Moodley is the country director of Oxfam. He's with us in studio. I think it's well known that wealth inequality, we have different political systems around the world, and some people unleash the human potential, other people restrict it. So you are going to see this happening. But from your perspective, what's creating, what is causing this divergence in what people earn and own?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few things, what's creating it and then what the consequences are.
Mm-hmm.
So, most people would agree that, having, more resources, more wealth generally should be a good thing. Part of the problem is the kind of growth we have, in different contexts. So what we're seeing, if you look at many countries in Africa, for example, is you've got good economic growth, so on average more than 5%, but very few people are benefiting from that growth. And it's similar, in many contexts. And the challenge with that is that, a lot of people are left behind, and that creates a whole range of things, social consequences. The World Economic Forum, spoke about inequality being, one of the key risks, over the next decade. But also, if you unpack that a bit, I mean, in South Africa, for example, if you look at the crime rate, one can see a correlation, in many South American contexts where inequality rates are very high. Murder rates are 4 times more than the kind of average. So, consequences of this kind of inequality has many, many different dimensions.
I think we know that. I think everybody gets that.
Yeah.
But the people who are making it unequal, the people who have the levers on power or the levers on the assets, do they care? Are they starting to care?
No, I mean, you have, some people that are starting to care. I mean, if you speak to, the likes of Bill Gates and more recently Patrice Motsepe and so on, they speak the same language in the sense that we have too much, and what we are doing is giving back. And that kind of narrative is starting to build. But I still think, with many of the practices that are happening in terms of how money leaves South Africa, for example, in terms of illicit flows, in terms of high net worth individuals not being tax compliant and so on, those are things that government needs to kind of ensure, regulation.
We're a business channel, so those high net worth individuals are listening here, and they're saying, "Hang on a minute, what do you mean not tax compliant? What evidence do you have of that?"
So SARS did an investigation, so this is not our figures or. And what it showed was that high net worth individuals earning more than 7 million, of the just over 9,000, their own stats show 360 that are fully tax compliant, as in meeting all of the requirements.
So where does the mindset change need to begin with the individuals themselves, or does government need to be the big bodyguard forcing these changes upon people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to come from both sides. Certainly, I mean, government has a role to play, especially with the current low economic growth rate in South Africa and the kind of predictions for it remaining quite low. Government's going to look for money from somewhere. And, one of the places to look is, where, people are not being tax compliant. And certainly, so government has a role to play. But I do think it's also the responsibility of companies and individuals who, on their own accord should be saying, we're here to make profit and, we need to be viable, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we also need to act responsibly as individuals or big business as well.
Is that discussion taking place between the two parties?
One of, what we're trying to do with this report is get more of the discussion and debate going. I think a lot of that has happened between government and private companies and individuals. But I do think this is a broader discussion that needs to happen, across the board, communities, civil society, trade unions, etc., because it's a really important issue for the country. And I think if we don't get this issue of inequality right, what we will find is that the country will certainly become more unstable than it is. Certainly more protests, which are happening, because there is a correlation between what the government gets in revenue and how much is available for social spending. I mean, certainly there's other factors in terms of how money is spent, whether that's spent efficiently and not, etc. But yeah, I mean, certainly I think all role players have a stake in this.
Just on that, are there any countries that are doing this the correct way? In other words, seeing that the inequality rate's decreasing?
Yeah. I mean, the one country that's often cited is Brazil. I mean, still has huge challenges, but certainly has managed to, contain inequality. And I mean, they use some of the fundamental things. So ensuring the basics, health and education, is in place. They've got a good social security system, Bolsa Familia, which isn't just about giving people money, but it's ensuring mothers are taking their kids to clinics, etc. So, but also minimum wages. So they looked a lot at minimum wages and looked at how boosting that can reduce inequality, but also big issues around productive assets. So who owns the assets? And in South Africa, that's very skewed.
So you say that that's the role model for South Africa, Brazil. You cannot be serious.
No, I'm not saying that is the role model, and that's why when I started, talking about Brazil, I said there's still plenty of issues in terms of the economy, unemployment, social unrest, and so on.
Surely we should be looking for a role model where the unemployment rate is low, not one where it's growing and higher. One where you're unleashing human potential, not where you're contracting it.
Yeah, but those are very difficult to find.
Well, the United States has done okay. 26% of the global GDP with 5% of the population on Earth. That's not too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, I think yourself, you can't deny the kind of issues they have and have been having over since the financial crisis.
People want to go to America. People don't want to go to Brazil. Those are the realities of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean,
talk to the Americans. Everyone wants to get in.
Yeah.
It's like the Eastern Bloc. Lots of people were shot trying to get over the wall from the east to the west.
Yeah.
Not one person would try to go from the west to the east.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you want to go to a place where, you have job, you have security, and so on. And, for us, South Africa's got that potential. We've got plenty of resources in the country, lots of potential, but it's how we harness that potential. And, I mean, in the report, we propose things that can be done to get us to the point where we actually start reversing that trend.
Pooven, thank you so much for your time today. That was Pooven Moodley.